Good morning, everyone. This is Michael, and I'm substituting for Tuya this morning. We're dealing with the soul of nations, and particularly, let us say, the relation of you as a soul to your own nation. So many things have been happening in the world which demonstrate that at the moment people are reacting, largely solar plexus reacting, as personalities to the events and possibilities of the times. Somehow we have to cultivate soul awareness, or at least the awareness of the increasingly soul-infused personalities, so that there can be a more intelligent and enlightened response to possibilities. What I'd like to do is just read a couple of things here from the Destiny of the Nations. Tuya has been reading here, and it's about the different kinds of systems that are put forward to answer today's problems. Some of them are enlightened, and some of them are maybe far less so. We read about the idea that is neither old nor particularly new of democracy, in which supposedly, but never yet factually, the people govern and the government represents the will of the people. It has not really happened. Maybe in ancient Greece you had something closer to it. We have today representatives, and we have kind of a republic where the people are represented by individuals who supposedly have their will at heart, but it's not a direct vote by any means. Democracy is particularly connected with the second aspect of divinity and with the manner of governing that is characteristic of the hierarchy of our planet. You know, there are other methods. Some reflect Shambhala more and some humanity more. Now, we'll focus here, and I apologize that I had better not read these things in Finnish. But Tuya can take that up when she starts here again. The next one is the emerging idea of a world state divided into various great sections. These are the Tibetan's words. This is the dream of the inclusively minded few, for which many regard humanity as yet unready. Well, maybe that's true. Maybe humanity is not yet ready for this inclusive vision, but the day will come. The Tibetan goes on. Towards this, the entire world is headed, in spite of its many ideologies, each fighting with each other for supremacy. We have the sixth ray at work, and as we know, one of the major rulers of the sixth ray is Mars, the planet of combat. So each narrow ideology, or each ideology in general, fights for its supremacy, its paramount place among other ideologies. Fighting each other for supremacy and oblivious of the important fact that all these ideologies may be temporarily adapted to the groups or nations who adopt them. Not every ideology is useful in every place, is what he's saying. He goes on. They are none of them suitable for general use, and I say this equally of democracy as of any other ideology. Recently, we've had examples of the attempt of the United States to impose democracy on primarily tribal cultures that are not ready for the ideals of democracy. The Tibetan goes on. They suit well, in all probability, the nations who accept them and mold their national life on their premises. They are only transitory substitutes in this transition period between the Piscean and the Aquarian ages, and cannot permanently last. So, we have to sit light in the saddle and not hold on too tightly to impermanent solutions. I suppose the Buddha would recommend that through his doctrine of impermanence. Nothing as yet is permanent, says the Tibetan. When permanency is reached, evolution will cease and God's plan will be consummated. And then, he says, the greatest revelation of all will come at the close of this world period, probably around, when the human mind, intuition, and soul consciousness is such that understanding will be possible. Well, that's something that we can certainly look forward to, and I will just, that's all I'm going to read for right now to you. We'll be able to take this up again when she is returning to the subject, and it will be also in Finnish. Okay. Well, all right. We need different attitudes all together. We need the attitude of the soul. We need the attitude of giving. We need the attitude of the open hand, only the opened, nail-marked hands that have experienced the crucifixion and the non-grasping for oneself can offer the bounty of the whole. Maybe not the bounty of the entire universe, but there's so much even on our planet which is inaccessible to man. I think people are often in a dreadful state. We've had more murders this week, people swept by a very narrow view of reality and a very narrow view of what God is, and thinking somehow that if they murder others that God is happy. Well, that's, as we can recognize from even primitive psychology, that's a huge projection. It is said that God makes man in his own image, but really it's very often the other way around, that according to the limitations of the human mind, so is the God conceived. So we'll bring light into our meditative consciousness. And we realize that whatever we do, the whole etheric system is meant to triangulate and bring in the triangles. Another name for the soul is the triangles. And rather than a pattern of squares, we want to underlie all that we do here on the outer plane with soul consciousness. This is usually not the way it is, but we're working to help make it so. Right now, the entire planet is deeply shrouded in glamour, as this image sort of conveys. The astral plane, at least the way the matter of the astral plane has been configured, is not anything really beautiful. It is distorted, exaggerated, minimized. It's out of proportion with reality. It is a great trap for so many, but when soul consciousness comes in, obviously we have better possibilities. And that's what people like ourselves are responsible for to live the expression of soul consciousness as much as we can. You know, we can't be perfect, but there's something magnetic about soul consciousness, and people notice, and they strive to do similarly. You know, the statement from the Christ, "I, if I be lifted up, will draw all men unto me." So each one of us has to struggle for the upliftment of our consciousness, which will become appropriately magnetic. And then the desire of all nations, the Christ, shall appear, as it is said, and this little image suggests it. He for whom the whole world waits has said that whatsoever shall be asked in his name, and with faith in the response, will see it accomplished. So, what is it? We'll pause for a moment. What is it that you would ask in the name of the Christ? Obviously, it's not going to be some selfish thing. So, otherwise it could not be asked in his name. So what would it be? Pause for a moment and think about it. There may be many specifics of what we ask, but we all know that we are working within the veil of ignorance, and most human beings know very little about their psychological state, nor can they bring relief to that state in the right way. So people really need, well, psychology is the new and coming science. It's the psychology of individuals, psychology of nations, and great areas, great continents, and the psychology of humanity as a whole. And then we'll be in a better state to see what is really needed. And we can help that. You know, each one of us lives in a nation governed by principally 5 great planetary centers, at least at this time, the most prominent of which are London and Geneva and New York. And they each have, you know, as planetary centers, they have signs. So energy comes in, astrological energy comes in through them. You know, London is so Vulcanian, and Geneva brings us the Jupiter, Venus, love, wisdom, and New York, the great idealism of Neptune and even Mars. And Tokyo and Darjeeling are in process of development. Probably Tokyo will develop before Darjeeling, and Darjeeling eventually as the most esoteric center of all, nearest to the Trans-Himalayan Brotherhood. So we are governed by these 5. Maybe some of us have been to these cities, especially maybe the first 3, London, Geneva, New York. Maybe we have a feeling for the radiation they emit. At least this is, pretty much for the Western world. And our various nations are under the expression, the radiation of these 5 centers. Just tune in for a moment on the particular city which represents a planetary center which is governing in the case of the nation in which you live. And there have been new alignments created. The British Empire no longer exists as it once did. We have involved in Europe both London and Geneva. And perhaps, of course, a country like Canada falls to an extent under the influence of London, but is very, very close to New York in that area, North America, the Western Hemisphere. So new alignments are occurring. Location isn't everything, and ancient ties are important too. But location is something. Now, maybe we cannot do so much for the planetary centers yet, but we can do something for the soul of the nations in which we live. What is, ask yourself, what is the soul of a nation? Let's ponder on that just a little bit. What is the soul of a nation? And, in an obvious way, of course, it represents the higher energies of particular nations. Not all nations yet are developed to the point, just like a human being, we cannot expect the full soul power to come in immediately. There are many things that have to be built up in the personality in order to receive. But there are quite a few nations in the world where there is sufficient advancement for the higher qualities, let's call them that, the higher energies, can be received and can condition the personality of those nations. So, so many of us maybe think in personal terms, and we think of ourselves as individuals, or we think of ourselves maybe in relation to smaller groups and so forth. But what about our nation? The nation in which we live, or to which our loyalty is primarily attached. What are those really higher qualities of our particular nation? Can we name a few of them to ourselves? Let's try to do that. Probably we, cannot name them all, but according to what occurs to your consciousness, to your mind, those are the qualities that you tend to notice most, and maybe they have a relation to you as an aspirant or a disciple, someone who is striving towards a better life, even as the nations as a whole, if the inner movement could be seen, are striving towards upliftment and the expression of their greater qualities. Now, think for a moment. You are a soul. You are a soul in incarnation. You have higher qualities. What are a few of those in your own individual life? And I suppose the question is, when you look at your abilities, maybe abilities taken in concert with groups that are important to you, what can you contribute to your nation that will really uplift it and help your nation express more of its soul nature? Let's pause on that and question our own possible contribution that can reinforce the best qualities of our particular nation. because each one of us really is somehow responsible to the larger possibilities, to building the causal body of our nation. And when that causal body is built to a certain degree, we're told that hierarchical representation can really enter, whether in the form of the new esoteric schools or the New World religion or Masonry perhaps. There are training grounds, but they require the causal development, and you can contribute. But how? Maybe you can align also with the motto of the planetary center to which your nation is related, such as for the United States, I light the way. Britain, I serve. Russia, I link two ways, and so forth. All of this can be found in the destiny of the nations. We have to think of ourselves in relation to greater wholes. It's the fragmented view of the world that contributes to illusion. And if we see the wholeness of things, it's less and less likely that we will be subject to illusion and all those things that prevent reality from dawning upon us and prevent us from being effective. So maybe study the destiny of the nations and the mottos of various nations and planetary centers. And see the future and how it is that you might be able to contribute to that future given your abilities, because we are responsible. This is our world, this is our one humanity, and we have, hopefully, a constructive part to play within it. So I guess what I'm saying is during the week, let's remember that our particular nation is a living thing, and that the planetary center with which we are affiliated is a living thing, and somehow we are responsible in our own little life to bring these points of expression into greater fulfillment. And that's living a life that's beyond just the individual life. That's, excuse me, living a life in relation to wholeness. And that is certainly contributing to the great task that is upon us and upon the hierarchy. It's the externalization of certain aspects of the spiritual hierarchy into visibility, so that every eye shall see, and the final reappearance of the world teacher, the Christ, Lord Maitreya, whatever name you want to call him by. So, tuning in on the great Lord of hierarchy and realizing that it's in his name that we undertake so many things. As if he is present wherever which he is, when two or more are gathered in his name. We say then together, we have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya, be with us. And if our attention is on the great Lord and what he hopes for humanity as much as we can conceive it, then we know we're really working in line with the divine plan. And that his influence can permeate every individual who remains open to him, every nation, especially those in whom the soul qualities are developing, and of course we're interested in humanity as a whole, because he is the great exemplar, bringing in the next great aspect of divinity, barely understood yet by humanity, the aspect of love, prepared for by his brother, the Buddha, the Lord of Wisdom. So let us remember our obligation to the greater picture, and not just our little individual life. Try to keep the wholeness in mind so that we can really help, ultimately, the soul of humanity to emerge through the emergence of the soul of the various nations that can at this time express soul. Probably there's no greater word of power for us at this time than the great invocation. And it is a method by which we can prepare the way for the externalization and the coming of the Christ. So let us attend to the words in a heartfelt way. This is the third aspect of the great invocation, the given in 1945. I would just like to remind everybody, um, Tuya and I have gotten together with the 2025 Initiative group with Alexander and Katya, and we're going to be every Thursday, Jupiter Day, Second Ray Day, at 10 minutes to 5 local time, your local time, going to give 10 minutes of silence to the task of strengthening the work, the effectiveness of the new group of world servers. And then at 5 o'clock your time, this is what we will say, the mantram of the new group of world servers. And may the power of the One Life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the One Soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the Great Ones. May we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. And we certainly realize how important a role the new group of world servers is intended to play in preparing the way for the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ. The Great Conclave of 2025 is impending, another 6.5 years roughly, intensifying as we go. So, as potential members of this new serving group, well, is it new? You know, it's new from the 1930s and even from 1925. It's new in the life of humanity, but it's been with us for a while, the World Servers Group. So, we do everything we can to work effectively within it and in general to strengthen the new group of world servers. We are reaching now the Christmas season. It's very special. We're in the Advent at the moment, and there are groups that are working towards Advent and with Advent, preparing the way to Christmas. At this time, interestingly, the solstice is occurring just about the same time as the Christmas. And the solstice, we know, is a very, very deep time of the entrance of the sun into Capricorn. At the same time, the Moria Federation will be beginning its 11th year. Or is it its 10th year? Well, anyway, we began early 2009 and late 2008, and now it's late 2018. We continue, and if you're interested in deepening your occultism, your esotericism, your knowledge of these things, please do go to the Moria Federation at gmail.com or moriafederation.com, and you'll be able to see what our offerings are. Quite a few people have been coming in, and maybe you'll be one of those people interested in deepening your work. Our schedule will be a little different. Tuya and I will be concentrating on the solstice and on the full moon and on the opening of the Moria Federation, on the New Year's Eve vigil and so forth. So we will hold back a little on the Ask programs. If we do anything, we'll have to see whether we do or not. We may be playing some of the ones we did before, but basically the concentration is on the Christmas season, the solstice, the New Year, and so forth during this time. And probably after 1 week or so of the new year has entered, we'll start the Ask program again. Tomorrow we will continue with the attracting of money for hierarchical purposes. It's a time when a lot of money is spent, on gifts and all those kinds of things, and we need to think also about the hierarchy's need for the resources, material resources, because they're not allowed to just enter and disrupt humanity's way by human hands, by human feet, and in the human way. The new salvation has to be worked out under the guidance of hierarchy, of course. So stay tuned. You can always use this particular link for any broadcast, and when we do have a webinar, we make every effort to give you the webinar link. But when broadcasts are offered, and many of them will be offered, you use the same link. Easy enough. We do appreciate your tangible gifts, your donations. It's how we operate. We're very grateful that you help to sustain this work of teaching and spreading the knowledge of the ageless wisdom. So we'll be wrapping up then today's meditation. Remember, you are responsible to the soul of your nation and its emergence.
Call